So to me, this speaks for the need, given what these companies are doing, given what some of the courts have done doctrinally, it speaks to the need for Congress to legislate on this topic and to give, frankly, antitrust enforcers more tools and allow private litigants to get into court, allow private litigants to bring class action suits to enforce our nation's antitrust laws. I mean, don't you think that if Congress were to put a stop to these forced arbitration clauses in the antitrust context, we'd see a lot more private enforcement? I mean, would that be your prediction, Mr. Mader?
That is what I would expect to see.
Do you want to weigh in on this, Ms. Meeke, at all?
I think this is extraordinarily important. Having access to lawyers to help vindicate your liberty in the form of damages is very, very important. But I would say that in the ecosystem that my friend Commissioner Metter just sort of outlined, class action cases are very good at getting people monetary damages.
Folks, welcome back to the channel where freedom isn't negotiable, the Constitution is our guide, and common sense still matters. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss the truth the mainstream media won't touch. Today we're diving into a Senate hearing that, frankly, says a lot about where this country stands, especially when it comes to these massive monopolies, the big tech overlords, and the bureaucrats that keep letting them run roughshod over the American people. You heard them talk about 3 pillars of antitrust enforcement: federal agencies, state attorneys general, and private citizens. And you know what? They're right on one point. Regular Americans are supposed to be part of the solution. That's exactly how this country was designed. We the people holding power to account. But here's the dirty little secret they never say out loud. Washington likes big tech. Both parties take their money, they lobby the living daylights out of Congress, and when it's time to actually protect you, the consumer, from predatory monopolies, guess what happens? A slap on the wrist and a $5 billion fine that Facebook paid out of petty cash. Meanwhile, small businesses are crushed, farmers are crushed, ranchers are crushed. But the corporations keep getting richer, and the politicians keep getting their donations. Let's talk about forced arbitration. These contracts are the very definition of what our founders warned about, a system rigged by the powerful against the citizen. They're telling you, if we rip you off, you don't get your day in court. You don't get a jury of your peers. You get a kangaroo court we picked behind closed doors. That's not the America I grew up believing in. That's the tyranny of corporate power fused with bureaucratic indifference. And here's the thing, this is not capitalism. True capitalism requires competition and accountability. What we have now is corporate socialism. Big tech, big meatpacking, big pharma, all protected by big government. Look, I'm no fan of trial lawyers getting rich off frivolous lawsuits. But when you have trillion-dollar companies writing the rules so nobody can challenge them, you've crossed a line. Class actions are sometimes the only tool left for citizens to fight back. That's why these companies fight them tooth and nail, because when 10,000 Americans stand together in court, the truth comes out. And that truth is ugly for the monopolists. And it's not just tech.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to the witnesses for being here. Mr. Metter, I want to pick up where Senator Blumenthal started as well, this question about private enforcement and forced arbitration. You've said, I think, that antitrust is law enforcement, full stop. Wouldn't you agree that private enforcement is essential to a functional antitrust regime?
Absolutely. American antitrust enforcement rests on 3 pillars of a stool. One is the federal government, the second are state attorneys general, and the third are private plaintiffs. I think I agree with Ms. Mecke's comments 100% that it's essential for the average person to have the ability to come into court and vindicate their individual economic rights.
But they really don't today, do they? I mean, in case after case, particularly if you're dealing with companies of any size, and let's take our friends in the big tech world, for example. I mean, all of their user agreements are full of the classic contracts of adhesion. I mean, Google, you waive your right to sue us in court or to bring a class action case. I mean, there's virtually, I don't want to say no ability, but very, very diminished ability for any private citizen to bring any meaningful antitrust suit privately. I mean, isn't that real? Isn't that right?
I agree that's a real problem, and it highlights the need for strong enforcement that can make it easier for private plaintiffs to bring follow-on lawsuits. But even then, as you point out, if you're subject to a forced arbitration clause, that can be more difficult.
And wouldn't it be much more powerful in the antitrust sphere if we could also bring class action suits? Private plaintiffs could bring class action suits, which again are theoretically possible, but effectively barred by many of these adhesion contracts, right?
I agree. In many instances, a class action suit is actually the most efficient way to resolve these big questions.
I mean, so to me, this speaks for the need, given what these companies are doing, given what some of the courts have done doctrinally, it speaks to the need for Congress to legislate on this topic and to give, frankly, antitrust enforcers more tools and allow private litigants to get into court, allow private litigants to bring class action suits to enforce our nation's antitrust laws. I mean, don't you think that if Congress were to put a stop to these forced arbitration clauses in the antitrust context, we'd see a lot more private enforcement? I mean, would that be your prediction, Mr. Meader?
That is what I would expect to see.
Do you want to weigh in on this, Ms. Meeke, at all?
I think this is extraordinarily important. Having access to lawyers to help vindicate your liberty in the form of damages is very, very important. But I would say that in the ecosystem that my friend Commissioner Metter just sort of outlined, class action cases are very good at getting people monetary damages, but it is really the federal government that takes the mantle for getting injunctive relief and equitable relief. And so when I was at DOJ, I had the privilege and great fortune of helping to sue Google twice and winning twice. And so when the Justice Department is in court fashioning remedies, they're talking about opening up markets, not just getting people money, which is important too, but making sure that our markets are delivering for the American people and are open for investment and innovation.
Yeah, so it's a both and, right? I think it's what you're saying, yeah. But those damage awards, let me put it to you this way. When the FTC in 2019 fined, I think it was Facebook, $5 billion, if I remember correctly. Yeah, fined Facebook $5 billion. I remember I was brand new senator. I was new up here, and I thought, $5 billion, that's a lot of money. I thought, Facebook is really going to change its behavior now. Not so much. Their stock prices went up the next day. They did nothing meaningfully different. I agree with you completely about the need for robust federal enforcement, and I am a former state AG, Senator Blumenthal is as well, so I know that we believe in robust enforcement at the state level also. But there's something powerful about a damage award from a jury. I mean, to have private enforcers be able to get into court, get in front of a jury, particularly in a class action context, it's one of the reasons that these companies have fought Section 230 in a different context for years and years. They don't want to face juries. And I think the same is true for antitrust enforcement. They do not want to face private enforcers who are coming and bringing their cases into court. And I think one of the best things that we can do for antitrust enforcement is we ought to get rid of these forced arbitration clauses, and we ought to open up the courthouse doors for private citizens, and we ought to allow them to form class actions to do it. And we ought to do all of the above. I agree with you, Ms. Meeke, and Mr. Metter, we ought to empower your agency as well, because we need, I think you are fundamentally right, we need more law enforcement, antitrust enforcement rather, is law enforcement, and we need more of it. Just in my last remaining seconds here, Mr. Metter, let me come back to you. You've said that big is bad, which I completely agree with, and that we need to consider structural remedies. Is that true outside of the tech sector? I know you said that about tech. Is that true more broadly?
I believe the competition concerns that have been most recognized in the tech sector are common in many other sectors. We need to enforce the antitrust laws evenly across the entire economy.
Good. Let me just give you one example here. 4 companies currently control over 80% of beef processing in this country, and very similarly high shares of poultry and pork. In Missouri, just in the last year, we have had 2 poultry plants closed by the dominant poultry processor, Tyson Food, canceling contracts with farmers, putting hundreds of people out of work across my state, really acting with total impunity. Why? Because they can, because they are essentially a monopolist. Is this the kind of thing that the FTC could take action on?
Yes, with the small caveat that the Department of Justice typically handles the packers, but the FTC sees this at the retail level as well. When there are a smaller number of packers, retailers pay higher prices, and then consumers pay higher prices, and then retailers want to merge and consolidate their own part of the supply chain to counteract that, and then it's sort of an arms race to see who can get the biggest the fastest.
I'll end with this. Right now, beef processing is just one example, but it's a perfect example for a state like mine. The only people who win are the monopolists. If you're a cattle rancher, you're not getting paid for your product. If you are a consumer at the grocery store, you're paying an arm and a leg for some hamburger. And yet, so the consumers are paying more, the farmers are getting paid less. Who is really making out like a bandit here? It's the monopolists. It's the four people, the four companies that control 80% of beef processing. That is not competition. We need more competition in this country, economy-wide. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let's talk about beef processing. 4 companies controlling 80% of the market. That's not competition, that's cartel behavior. You know who gets hurt? The cattle rancher in Missouri whose contract got canceled by Tyson Foods. The worker at the plant who lost their job. The mom at the grocery store paying double for hamburger. And who wins? The monopolist. The one that writes the contract that says, take it or leave it. It's the same story in nearly every sector. Poultry, pork, pharmaceuticals, and yes, big tech. This isn't some free market. This is a rigged market. Now the senators love to posture. They love to talk about how something must be done. But where's the bill? Where's the vote? Where's the actual law that tears down these forced arbitration clauses and lets Americans go to court like our Constitution guarantees? I'll tell you why it hasn't happened. Because too many people in Washington are owned, lock, stock, and barrel, by corporate donors. Here's what a real America First, freedom-loving antitrust agenda looks like. 1. Ban forced arbitration clauses. Restore your right to a trial by jury. 2. Break up monopolies. Don't just fine them, break them apart when they're too big to be accountable. 3. Protect small businesses and farmers. Stop letting conglomerates buy everything in sight. 4. End the revolving door. If you regulate an industry, you shouldn't be allowed to go work for them. 5. Empower private citizens to sue, because you are the best defense against tyranny, whether it's government or corporate. I'll say it loud and clear. Big is not always bad, but big and unaccountable is. We need competition. We need local businesses. We need family farms. That's how you build strong communities and a strong nation. And we need politicians who care more about Main Street than they do about their campaign war chest. If you agree, don't just sit there. Get involved. Call your representatives. Tell them to end forced arbitration. Tell them to break up the monopolies. And if they won't, fire them in November and elect someone who will. Patriots, this is the fight of our time, the fight to keep America free from tyranny, no matter what mask it wears. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and drop a comment below. Do you think forced arbitration should be banned? Do you think big tech should be broken up? I read every single comment and I want to hear your thoughts. God bless you, God bless our farmers and small businesses, and God bless the United States of America. Stay vigilant. Stay informed. Stay free.